was a moment that I realized I'm not learning from anybody anymore. I needed to be with lighting designers. I needed to be surrounded by people that inspire me, that teach me new things. Wherever we go to new environments, we want to stick to things that we knew and bring it in, and that kind of stops us from learning more. And the fact that people couldn't speak any of the languages I knew forced me to create this new personality, this new language. So I left and spent a month and a half in Sydney alone. So I had a lot of time spending in nature in Sydney and thinking and contemplating of what I want to do. And it was just this moment I realized I know what I want to do. I want to have my own business.
From New York City, I am Thomas, and this is The Light Lounge, a podcast founded as an art project, me interviewing and talking with the most brilliant and creative lighting designers in the world, to learn from them and to get inspired by the stories they share. In this week's episode, I speak with Golsana Heshmati from The Seat. She founded the lighting design firm in New York City, and we're going to learn so much more in our conversation. Enjoy.
First of all, hello, and thank you so much for having me on this podcast. It's such an honor to be here, talk to you and to your audience. This is a really exciting moment for me. And yeah, so outside of lighting design, my hobbies are mostly I swim a lot, and I tend to get out of town as much as possible to get away from New York City a little bit and go to nature and hike. So those are my most important hobbies. And another thing that I do every year is to take 2-3 months away from the city, remote, to go to Europe or another city that inspires me, to be able to see what we are doing from a distant with a distant eye, and have a more calm and distant view of my studio or what I do in my life in New York, and it's really helpful. So
New York City, very busy, very dynamic, and obviously with your own business, there's a lot going on. Where do you swim? Do you usually swim indoors, or when you go?
I swim indoors. I swim. There's swimming pools are pretty limited in New York because we don't really have that real estate. But I do go to YMCA, which has the more closest to an Olympic pool. That's where I go.
Cool. Has the outdoor connection or swimming, is this something that you've carried from, I don't know, childhood, or things that you've done in your earlier days?
Actually, no. I grew up in Tehran, Iran, which is a very crowded and polluted city. So connection to nature was not something I was really used to when I was a kid, but I think it came naturally that I needed it. So I found peace and moments of meditation in nature, and living in California really enhanced it, because there you get the most beautiful landscapes. So,
and just for me to learn, what's the pollution look like? Is it like air quality, or is it?
It's air pollution. It's really polluted, and cars.
Yeah. Well, and now in New York City,
New York City is kind of it's interesting because New York City seems less polluted. So I am used to that pace and that crazy driving, and
So you're thriving in this New York City
so
environment.
This is actually where I found myself mostly feeling home, versus compared to all the beautiful calm places I've been. This is actually it's closer to my natural habitat.
It's so interesting. So you already mentioned a couple of places that you have been, or that have influenced you: Tehran, California, New York City. Were you born in Tehran?
I was born in Tehran. I was raised in Tehran, and I left when I was 18. I went to Cyprus first.
Turkey. Yeah.
To study architecture, and and that was it's an island with the most beautiful beaches of Mediterranean Sea. but yeah, so I was in Cyprus, lived there, and then moved to Spain, to Madrid, to do the master's in lighting design.
Mm-hmm.
And I moved to Barcelona to work as a lighting designer for some years, and then came to US, to California, to San Francisco, lived in Berkeley and San Francisco, and then moved to New York. And I've been here for, 11 years already.
Wow. Yeah, I just crossed my 10-year New York City mark myself in June.
They can call you a New Yorker now.
That's
what they say.
That's what people say. I still feel like I just arrived here.
That's the feeling, right? You haven't seen many things yet, but
it's wild how quickly the time passes. Okay, well, thank you for the brief abstract of how quickly you've gone from 0 to 100. I would be curious to learn a little bit more your time in Cyprus, and who was Golsana with an age of like 18 going into architecture? Do you remember what it felt like moving from Tehran to?
Yeah, perfectly. I can remember. As you said, time goes by so fast, as if it was yesterday. But so I come from a family of non-architects, like not a creative family, but my dad is a dentist, my mom is an economist, now she's a psychologist. It's so we didn't have anyone in the construction business or in architecture, and I wanted to become a dentist, actually. That was my goal when I was 15.
Mm-hmm.
And I soon realized that this is not what I want to do, and this is not me, because I was more into arts, and it didn't speak to what I really wanted. So it was just by kind of pure accident, but with a couple of my friends, we decided to explore universities outside of Iran, and I didn't want to be too far from home. So there was this school, it's an American Turkish school in Cyprus, and we applied for it, and my parents were on board, so I went to architecture school. And
you spoke English?
Yes, I spoke English because I think it was so important for my parents for us to learn English. So I started learning English from 6 years old, going to like English schools. And I think this is the case in Iran a lot, people that I know. But yeah, so I went to Cyprus, and just getting to know architecture, getting close to that side of my brain, that it's creating spaces and more artistic way of thinking. But it was an interesting place because northern Cyprus is fully sanctioned, so it was not as if you moved to Europe from Tehran.
Mm-hmm.
It was beautiful and nature was great, but not limited amount of resources. So the school it was a big school, but I really wanted to get something out of this. Being away from the family and hometown was already difficult. So I studied a lot, and I became a top student of the school, and just started to love architecture so much. So that became a lifestyle for me. It was constantly involved in that. And yeah, and I didn't want it to stop. So when I finished Cyprus, I wanted to go to architecture school again to do a master's degree. And
let me interrupt for one second. What's lifestyle? What's the lifestyle of an architect? Or it became, you mentioned it became sort of a lifestyle.
Lifestyle, for me, lifestyle of an architect is not just what you do at job, but the way you think, the way you keep yourself curious, and delve into many aspects. Like, I think architecture is not just designing spaces; it's designing people's lives and the scenario of living. And so you need to know about anthropology, you need to know about politics, you need to know about arts. And one of my teachers in Cyprus, he was saying that philosophers design the mentality of a society, and architects design the body of that same mentality. So I think it's a kind of a big picture of living. I think we don't see it as pronounced as it used to be, like, modernists or Renaissance architects, but it still is very much telling that who we are as people.
Of course, I mean, just walking through cities, when you discover new cities, you look towards architecture and how architecture is different, making a character of a city, and how you move in between buildings. Of course, this is what I just said, not nearly as eloquent as what you expressed, and for architecture students, this might be duh, of course, that's what it is, but you're correct. I'm identifying myself with the neighborhood I live in,
right,
or that I associate myself with, or a feeling that I want to have in my day-to-day environment. It's it is extremely impactful. So thank you for elaborating on that piece. So there's one. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go.
There's one piece that I found noted that maybe came a little bit later, but let's move maybe to your master's when you moved from Iran to Cyprus, from Cyprus to Barcelona, Madrid.
To Madrid, yes. So this came actually also pretty accidental, but I wanted to study architecture, and I was so passionate about it, and I was looking for master's degrees around the world. I applied for a couple of schools in England, and also my cousins were living in Madrid. They moved there, and we're very close. So they said, "Why don't you apply to Spain?" And I didn't know Spanish, but we always wanted to live together. And I said, "This is amazing because I'm gonna learn a new language and be with people that I love in a city that it's really interesting to me." So I started to look at master's degrees in the Polytechnic School of Madrid, and I found this master's degree that says architectural lighting design, and I just thought that's interesting. That can add a tool to my architecture toolbox. It's interesting. I wanna know more about lighting design. So I started to communicate with the school, and they responded earlier than the British schools, and the communication was only in English. So I assumed the master's is in English. So I applied, and they approved me, and they didn't even ask if you know Spanish. And I arrived in Madrid with literally 5 sentences that I could say in Spanish, and I went the class, and it was everything in Spanish, and no one, a single person didn't speak English in my whole school. So that was a shock, but also I was young, and I guess I couldn't do it again. But I learned Spanish. I quickly learned Spanish and made friends, and Spanish people are nicer, and they're receptive. They talk to you even if you don't understand. So then learning Spanish was also something that I wanted to accomplish, and lighting design. And so it was this whole new world for me. But yeah.
Was your cousin also in architecture?
No, my cousin is she studies actually languages. And my other cousin is she's a graphic designer, but they didn't know. So she attended the first the intro course of the class with me, and she said, "This is difficult. You have to record it and then come home and replay it, and we can talk about what they said in class," because I couldn't understand anything. But I think it's just your age, but you're a sponge. I was a sponge of languages, so I used to before the classes, I asked the professors to send me the lectures, so I would just read through them and translate them for myself. And the day after, all the things I wanted to tell the little amount of friends I made was I already made notes on sticky notes to say, "Oh, I like your dress," before going to class. So that really helped. It was
phenomenal.
But it was so fulfilling to, after 6 months, being able to communicate, and also learning something like lighting design. There's a lot of technical words that you share with English. So I learned it. It happened.
So you speak Iranian,
Yeah, Farsi.
Farsi. I'm sorry.
It's the same thing.
English, Spanish now.
Yeah. I Spanish now. I speak a little French. Yeah, and when I was in Cyprus, I started to learn Turkish, but now that's all gone. You have to keep
Practicing. Yeah.
practicing.
Yeah, using it. Wow, what an interesting moment, potential of shock, but also a moment of potential adversity.
Right.
To be in an environment that you went into it and expected something completely different, and suddenly you had to manage overcoming it because the goal of learning architecture and lighting design was obviously still there.
Yeah, and it's a good lesson in general. Wherever we go to new environments, we want to stick to things that we knew and bring it in, and that kind of stops us from learning more. And the fact that people couldn't speak any of the languages I knew forced me to create this new personality, this new language, and however I want to spoke, as if I was just learning to speak.
Yeah.
So it was a good learning lesson of letting go of the things you do.
And I can imagine that not knowing the language, you maybe had to engage with your environment and with other people even more, not only on a language basis, but potentially body language and how you behave.
Absolutely.
And making someone else aware that you have a question, potentially having a touch on the arm to I assume you knew saying hello and hey, I have a question, but that the engagement is a completely different one if you are not able to necessarily only rely on language. Yeah. I had a very similar experience when I 5 years ago stopped working or practicing as a professional lighting designer and came into a sales environment. How much the mind shift had to shift completely, and I suddenly had to. You mentioned identity and how you define yourself. I had a very similar transition of, oh my God, who am I? What's the language everyone talks around me, and what are suddenly now the focus points that are maybe completely different than. But I absolutely don't regret it, because it just made me a much more holistic, not human being, but more of an expert in a way that I can speak now both languages in the same way as, in this case, a potential metaphor, but also one-to-one of you being able to speak Farsi or English or Spanish.
Yeah, and it's interesting because this happens to you a lot in life. It's not necessarily language, but when you switch what you were used to, even in starting a business, I was always a creative person, and I know how to design, but I didn't know how to run a business or how to do sales, because that's also a new language that they don't teach you. But you have to do sales to make money and to bring in clients or for your business to work. And if the new character you make and the new personality, or getting comfortable and using the things that you knew as a tool, what are you good at, and put it into play to make a new thing.
Yeah.
So at school was the same. I couldn't talk to pitch my projects, but I had to do double work of making it really be clear visually and bring in all the skills I had from architecture school to showcase the projects that I was working on.
Yeah. And the master's was in architecture lighting design?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
It was cool, yeah. So I did the master's, and just when I finished, the worst recession of Spain happened. So we were all supposed to have internships and kind of lined up for us at school, and everyone had to go back to their countries. Most of my class were international students from Latin America or other places. But I just got very lucky. I went to Barcelona and did this interview with a very small office, and I got the job, and they were working on public projects. So they had work. So I started there and I stayed with them. They got me a work visa, and I stayed there for 4 years.
Oh, that was Nur and Loom
Yes.
architecture? Yeah.
Nur is Farsi for light.
Oh, okay.
So we, at the beginning, the studio had a different name, but immediately when I joined, my boss decided to take part from his partners and start a new studio, and we were naming it. So I suggested let's name it Nur.
Wow.
And he loved it. So yeah.
Wow.
So we made this. It was a startup. We just
from the
started
beginning.
from scratch.
You had impact on
Yeah.
the name and bringing your culture to a new business. Amazing. If you don't mind, I would like, there's like a piece that I read in preparation that you also did maybe just a class or a course in graphic design and multimedia presentation at the same time as you did your master's in architectural lighting design. Is this right?
Yes. When I went to Barcelona, I just did this. They call it a postgraduate degree.
Yeah.
But I guess it's a short master's degree.
But did you find, was this something that you felt you wanted to learn more about to better communicate more clearly visually? Because that's what you talked about also.
Yeah, exactly. And also I was always curious to, new softwares. And I felt like the years in lighting design school, I might felt a little behind on architectural software. So I wanted to learn 3D Max and just still keep up with the presentation.
Wow.
Yeah, trends.
So fascinating. So you did like a full master's program, and on top of that,
yes,
basically another course.
Things you do when you're young.
Well, but it's you're laughing about this or you're smiling about it, but it's I think it shows the dedication and grit and stamina to just really dive into this field and try to learn as much as possible. You said like a sponge, but when I think about my master's at Parsons, there was nothing else, and I was either completely overwhelmed or I didn't have the focus yet, but it's very impressive.
Thank you.
I think you just say it on the side, but I think it's very impressive. Very early on, obviously showing a certain lifestyle is not just like a certain attitude to learn more and to expose yourself to potential unknown situations, to get more comfortable in an environment that's ever changing. Very impressive.
Thanks.
So you stayed 4 years. You stayed 4 years at Nur Luma in Barcelona, and what was special about that time for you? What do you remember most?
I think everything about that time was the highlight of my life, because number one is the fact that I actually developed to learn a language fluently, so now I could live in Spanish with friends, work in Catalan and Spanish. And the thing about our job was really the highlight of my life, because it was we had public commissions of work. We had to travel around Spain and study the most ancient buildings and propose better lighting for them. So the way it worked is that the government had some budget aside for development and for historic sites. So we were commissioned, for example, to study 33 historic sites in Barcelona, which is Gaudi's building. So we had got access to go in there, study it, sketch it. I used a lot of hand sketching then, and make this interesting proposals for the city of Barcelona to study. And then also we went to Galicia to do lighting of a cathedral, but also the fact that we were few people. I immediately had a voice and had my own projects, so that kind of gave me a lot of confidence to then move into my career, because I already had done so many interesting historic projects with this office. So.
Yeah. It sounds the not empowerment, but being in an environment that allows you to not not make mistakes, but to explore things. And it seems like that also the projects that you talked about, that your work potentially has a tremendous impact of the city and how very important sites.
Absolutely, yes. And so there are magical moments that happened when I was working in Barcelona. We had a project, a cathedral in Galicia, northwest of Spain, and we went there to design lighting for it. And for that, we had to design a product to actually work. So we collaborated with Airco to design a product for specifically this cathedral. But when they wanted to execute a project, they started digging the street to be able to mount the poles, and they found another site underneath that was this like archaeological caves, and they made
beautiful.
It's just crazy. And then the mayor of the time, he said, let's make a museum, an underground museum for people to go and see these murals. There were this thousands years of
amazing.
So we suddenly, our project switched to become a archaeological museum. And because the cathedral was kind of my project, this became my project, and it was more modern so I loved it. And they made it happen. It was pretty easily.
Spectacular.
And flawlessly. It was really the best experience ever.
Yeah. It's so interesting how I keep thinking about, and listeners might hear me reference this in other conversations, the concept of time and the concept of like speed, and how these buildings that you just talk about are there for like thousands of years. And the way how we're designing today, I think the awareness grows again more for better quality equipment that's being used, or for building materials that are not just there to last for 5 years in a retail store and then it's being torn down completely. But is this something that you think about in your design practice today?
The longevity of projects?
Yeah,
this is actually a challenge I have, because I do a lot of retail. I work for Callison Architects then, and I consider I got an award for retail, so I do lots of retail, luxury retail, and they're just temporary projects.
Yeah.
And it feels a little unsettling to know that your project is going to switch. But then also when I look at retail in general as a concept, I feel like, bazaars, and it's a place for people to communicate and connect, so that kind of gives me a little bit better sense. But yeah, I think longevity to your question of what we do is really important. I think we can't just design things and thinking that it's going to go away. I remember people asking, is this LED going to last forever? Absolutely not. And in some projects you care more, like it's school projects, like educational buildings, that really what you design is going to stay there for 20 years. So you need to make sure you can update your design with technology.
Yeah.
And for retail projects, unfortunately, you can't really do much about that. But being more conscious about recycling programs, or what happens after the life of this building, which could be only 5 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's maybe come back to it when we get sort of to your practice, and maybe it's just me, the German, trying to stick to the timeline. You already mentioned Callison, and we will get there. But after Nur-Lum, Barcelona, your 4 years there's another pivotal moment from you moving from Barcelona to the US.
Yes.
What made you move, and what was the moment where you thought, okay, now I have to change something, and why the US?
My family moved to US when right at the time that I moved to Spain. So my parents, my sister, they're all in New Jersey. But my boyfriend at the time was going to Berkeley University. So I moved to US, and the recession really was starting to put its point on Nur and on everything in Spain. So I thought this is the moment for me to make a change. I wanted to go to New York, but I didn't. So first I went to San Francisco, where my boyfriend was, and And I was considering switching. Maybe I should go back to architecture now that I'm here from scratch again. But I immediately found a job in lighting design in the Arabic class of French, which is an amazing place to work at because of the projects they do and the expertise they have. It was certainly a cultural shock for me from Spain to US.
How?
Just the way we work here now, it's different. I think Spanish people were more easygoing. They make things happen, but not as precise or intense as they do here in Spain.
In the US.
In US. And yeah, I think, and also like the way office environments kind of like trying for me to navigate this cultural difference and how I communicate with my coworkers now, it was absolutely different. So it was a bit challenging that shift was different. But yeah, I mean, I wanted to integrate as much as possible in American culture because I did in Spanish and I thought it's easy.
You dive in.
But it was not that easy for me because I think being Spain is closer. I think they were closer to my culture from Iran. Mm-hmm. They were like warm people, and in San Francisco was for me a little challenging at the beginning. But then I learned little by little, but it was not as fluid.
It's so interesting that you spoke the language this time.
Yes, exactly.
But it was harder to maybe connect.
And something I feel like now I see with my students is that, you know, the ability to speak your mind easily and just bring your ideas even without really researching or contemplating too much. Just having that confidence to just speak your mind is something cultural. It's something that they teach you, no matter you know the language or not. When I started working in San Francisco, I remember we had one intern and she came in and she just immediately threw out her ideas, super confident. And I said, oh my God, I don't know anything. I can't do this. I can't just, because I have to go home and think about it and research about it. I don't have this ability to just say things. And then little by little I learned that this is a cultural thing. I see now with my students from different nationalities, people that grew up in North America, they more easily express what they think, and they bounce ideas, and they're not worried about the fact that the idea is not perfect. But yeah, so I was not like this, so it affected me. That was a shock for me.
It's interesting because I think both have pros and cons.
Yeah, but it's true. I think, as you said, there's pros and cons, but I think more pros to express yourself.
100%. Because it also allows for maybe a more honest discourse, right? If we all think about things internally and we ponder about things and we don't express them, then we don't have the ability to bounce back things and potentially come better or let things to allow to surface. So you stayed 2 years at Alba Glasgow French. I think they recently rebranded when I looked into them again. Also beautiful projects, I think. And then again, another moment from San Francisco to New York. Yeah,
so I always wanted to come to New York. So we decided that to move to New York. And I came here and wanted to also explore working in an architecture office. I always had this back and forth with going back to architecture, staying a lighting designer. So I got a job at Callison then, which is now Arcadis, but as an in-house lighting designer that also can work on architectural interior projects.
Arcadis is an architecture firm?
Arcadis is a large engineering firm, but Callison is an architecture firm. So they acquired Callison some years ago.
Yeah, it's a large company.
It's a very large company.
Thousands of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was interesting for me. First time working in a corporate office. I loved it. It was so many people to connect with, so many, like the perks of being in corporate, like the benefits, and I loved it. And also, there's some things that is not great about a large office. We were 100, I think, in our office in New York, and so normally when you're architects, they just work with their own teams, so they don't really know everyone. But because I was lighting designer, I knew everybody. Like I had to work with every team in that 100-person office. And I'm a social person, so I loved it. It was me and my boss then, and she was super busy when I arrived because she was, providing lighting design services to a whole huge office. So I had a lot of responsibility immediately, and that also helped me a lot growing in my career, being able to, being responsible, not having someone to hold me accountable, and I had to prove my abilities to myself and to the teams that I was working. So that really helped. It was a kind of a push of fast forward growth in my career from a junior designer to then as an associate.
Yeah. So maybe jumping and the connection to, again, the moment that I found so fascinating about coming to Spain and suddenly being forced to learn something very, very quick. It seems that it has a lot of benefits. It might be a shock to the system at first, but you are forced to learn a lot. And if you are empowered or maybe challenged, that you just like sort of rise to the challenge.
Yeah, I think it's human nature. If they put you in a place that you have to survive, you will. But you need to be there.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you get comfortable with where you are.
Yeah. It's so interesting how you have different, not only different sort of explorations of speed. That's maybe more my topic that I'm curious about, but the concept of like smaller offices being more nimble and almost like small speedboats being extremely quick and nimble, but then at the same time also, it sounded like being again a speedboat, but just like in a larger environment where you also had to make quick decisions fast and serving so many different teams across the company.
Yeah. And it was a great experience, and I loved it. But then it was a moment that I realized I'm not learning from anybody anymore. I needed to be with lighting designers. I needed to be surrounded by people that inspire me, that teach me new things about it. It was us three in our small department in a huge office, and lots of presentation, lots of things we learned from reps, but nothing from peers in the industry. So HLB reached out to me because before I did an interview with them before going to Callison. They were not looking for anyone, just my boss at Arabac recommended me to talk with Barbara at HLB, and then they reached out to me and they said, "Are you interested in a position?"
And just for the listeners that might be international, I think HLB is certainly almost a household name in the lighting design industry in North America, but Horton Lees Brockton Lighting Design, and you mentioned Barbara
Horton.
Barbara Horton,
So they reached out to me, and I said yes. I want to learn more. I want to grow more, and I want to give a shift to my career. So I started at HLB, and I stayed there for 3 years, and that was a tremendous experience, and what really helped me shape me to be able to start my own business. They're very empowering of women, and also they put trust in me specifically, to learn, and I was not shy to express what I want to learn. So I asked to be put in the marketing side as well, and the business side. I wanted to know more about all of these things. And and they're pretty inclusive. So
you mentioned being exposed to other lighting designers. was the experience at HLB at large inspirational, filled with a lot of learnings, or were you also looking for certain mentors to learn from? Both.
Yeah, both. I mean, a lot of learning from your colleagues. Even if you have a question about controls, if you have a question about a certain product, there's 30 people around you that they're doing the same thing. So they remember something you don't, and there's this back and forth of idea, which is very refreshing. And also having mentors is very important, to see people that, like Barbara, like Lee, that are principals at HLB, see them grow and in different ways, but that is possible. I remember there's this end of year review at HLB, and they asked you about your blueprint, like what do you want to be, and they asked me, like, what do you want to be in 5 years? And I was like, I want to run this business. And she was shocked, but she was appreciative. She was like, oh great, so you want to own it, you want to be a partner. And I was, yeah, I want to do that. I want to learn to know how to do that. So if giving the people that you work for you with this environment, this platform, to express themselves and say what they really want and dream the craziest dream, the biggest one, I think is really valuable. So that's what that's what I learned and I want to implement in my business right now. So that your future is what you decide. It's not what I decide for you, kind of thing.
Was it appreciated, or was it seen? How did the environment respond once you put this out there?
No, it was appreciated. It was very welcomed, and and they provided tools for me to make it happen. The company, I think, I'm really grateful to be at HLB, to shape me. The person that I am right now was very influenced by working at that firm. But the companies that kind of also grew to it in a different scale that was no longer comfortable for me or not close to my vision. But in general, it was great.
Yeah, I think that's the highest form of potential commitment that an employer can ask for from employees, is that they know what they want in the best way to contribute, and not sort of just do your 9 to 5. It's like if you have people in your organization that are committed, that are doing more than ask for. I mean, this kind of rather helps as a leader to know, oh, this is a person who is dedicated, who wants to do things. It's rather, okay, how can we make this work? Because in an ideal way, the person who is like open and committed and goal-oriented might help open up new opportunities for the leader, him or herself. So I think it's something that I'm trying to, even for myself, articulate, okay, what do I want, and what is allowing myself to be larger than I am today, right? Because then I only can grow if I express and maybe also sometimes err and just say the things that ahead of me that I picture myself being or doing. Then it's rather, you might have appeared on the radar as, oh, Golsana wants something, this is good for our business, let me see how I can arrange things to support it, because it will overall help. So I think there are a lot of returns.
Yeah, and I think it's, we can, employers might at one point kind of think smaller scale as a whole, say like, oh, my business, my clients, but as a creative of a niche industry, we're like a whole, right? Like we're few of us, it's really a niche, and we're still building this industry. We're proving our point. We try to set a foot in the architecture construction, have a voice and value what we do. So I think something that's really important to the founders, to business owners, is that it's not just you and your business. Like every person that works with you, or is your student, or is your coworker, they're helping shaping the industry. They're those people that might be your competition, but they're not going to go like halfway, like cut your price to win the project. You're together building something that's meaningful.
Yeah.
And I guess luckily this is the luck that we have in New York City. There's a lot of us, but there's a lot of work. So competition is not something that is intense, and so people support each other.
Yeah.
And that's how I felt everywhere I worked, is even if you're not there anymore, they're still supportive. And I think building that relationship with your employees or with your employers, like your bosses, they're your mentors, or you learn a lot from people underneath you, or interns, or I think it's valuable. Communication, connection in our industry is really important.
Yeah. And I guess also there are more influencers and more people who are explaining the value of lighting design, it helps stabilize potentially the value, or it continues to create the expectation that a lighting designer provides value on a project, and a lighting designer is also worth a certain compensation.
Absolutely.
Based on the value that's provided. Yeah. Okay, so I would like to speak a little bit more about the seed, and you already put the kind of origin of like why founding a business, that you had already at HLB this aspiration. What is the seed? How did you build it? How did you build a brand? Because if I look at the seed from the outside, it looks beautiful projects, beautiful logo.
Thank you.
Beautiful communication, a lot of depth to the design, that there's story, that there is quality, etc. Where did the name Seed come from? How was the process starting your own business?
So I quit my job at HLB because I felt like something was missing, and I didn't know what it was. So I wanted to explore what I wanted to do next, and I didn't know if I wanted to have a business or not, or even in lighting design. That was the level. So I started traveling the world. It took me like 9 months traveling. So I went to Iran, did road trips in Iran. It was my first time because I left very early. Mm-hmm. I went to India. I went to different places, and I participated in this competition for public light art with a colleague, and we got we won to have an art installation in Australia, Sydney, and it was the first time in my life that I had time. So I left and spent a month and a half in Sydney alone, because you have to be there on call if something goes wrong with the installation. So I had a lot of time spending in nature in Sydney and thinking and contemplating of what I want to do. And there was this point, and I was reading and listening to books and podcasts, but it was just this moment I realized I know what I want to do. I want to have my own business. And I just saw, so I knew the SEED stands for Studio of Embodied Experience Design. But I guess first came SEED because I saw this logo and somewhere it was a clothing store in a mall in Sydney. And I was like, oh, that name is cool. It stands and it sticks. So I then started to design the name, the logo, website, all that it was the most fun part of the business, was kind of creating it from scratch. And I'm very visual and very specific about graphics. Mm-hmm. So I wanted it to stand out. Normally, I feel lighting design studios are less sensitive about their branding. But I'm just a very graphic person. So I wanted this to also kind of become something that makes us stand out a bit more and speak the language of the architects, which are the clients. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. So I came back to New York and rented a desk in a Chinatown co-working space, and that's how it began.
How did the competition in Sydney go, or the art project?
Oh, it went really well. It was so we designed it here in New York. a lot of learnings, because when you design something and you sketch it, you need to think about how much it's going to cost. The competition provided a certain amount of money, but our project was much more expensive because we had sound control, we had like light control, but that was also a good experience. We raised money from the lighting community. We got our light fixtures for the installation sponsored by Philips, and some other manufacturers sponsored us. We had this controls sponsored, and so what we got from the competition was our expenses to stay there and hire a local contractor in Sydney to make it. We had a lot of fabrication going on, but it was a great experience.
How long did it run?
A month and a half. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, I lived almost a year in Australia, and
you did?
I have
It's amazing.
I have great memories. It's a very special place. Yeah.
That was kind of like the moment for me, if I want to say, like, the most significant moment that I had time to think. This happens rarely for people working, and so
you have to step back and take the time to consider where you want to be, what you want to do, etc. I agree. So you're running now. You have the seed 6 years now.
Yes, 6 is almost. It's like in August will be 6 years.
Yeah. So that's big, and it seems like for 6 years, looking through your journey, that's like the biggest chunk of time at like anywhere. Your own business for 6 years. Congratulations, obviously. I think it is recognized on a lot of variety of ways how the work you do and how much dedication you put to your projects, and I only can recommend it to listeners. Even if you are the business owner of another lighting design firm, if you are a young student just starting, please have a look, because the website is really beautiful, well crafted, not only the designs themselves. I think you recently won an LIT Lit Award. How does it pronounce? It's something in award.
Lit Award.
Yeah. For
2 projects. One is a museum project that I worked on. It's in Tehran. So it was best museum lighting, and a workplace that we did in Chelsea in New York. So
yeah, I think congratulations.
Thank you.
You also moved offices, I think, from time to time, which maybe also speaks to exploring things and finding the best fit for your office again. You mentioned a co-working space in Chinatown, if I'm not mistaken.
It's kind of mostly growth driven, because so Chinatown was me and 2 interns. Which one of them is now with us still, like is one of the great designers at the seat. But then I moved to another space in Lower East Side after COVID. We were 3, and then to Dumbo to have our own office. It was no longer shared, which was a great experience and a place to build our office of our own with our brand. And now we moved to Soho, which is much bigger, but we are more people. So,
how many people are you now?
Overall, we're 8, but soon to be 9. But in the office, we're 5. We have 3 remote.
Wow. How did you? Again, sort of jumping into something completely new. It's like not only design; it's the brand. It's office administration, setting up the legal entity, etc.
It's challenging. It's super difficult, I would say, because we don't know how to do that. I know how to make a logo or a beautiful website, but I didn't know how to do the administration work, which is a lot of work. And you have more time when you're starting a business. You have a couple of projects and time. So I think what I did that I would recommend to people that are starting their business is I read almost every book out there about running a business or how to run a business, right? A design business. And I attended lots of webinars and lots of events. and there are resources out there. There are lots of resources on internet. But what we did recently is hiring an admin person, which I think it was one of the best decisions I've made. And I don't know how I was doing all the things that she's doing right now full time. I was doing that by myself, but yeah. But it's just kind of developing little by little. I guess like our studio or Seed was my project, and then other things were just contributing to it. But the company is still my most important project.
Yeah. How do you attract? By now, obviously, you've built a body of work, award-winning body of work, that potentially brings in new projects on a established basis. But obviously, COVID was in between. How did you go about it, getting projects?
So starting was pretty difficult because I was used to large-scale projects. Corporate projects, hospitalities, and it's really difficult to convince an established architecture studio to work with one person from scratch that just started. I had lots like extensive experience, but I couldn't put it out there. Also, they were not mine to showcase them. So my marketing strategy was, well, first was that I realized I don't know how to do it. I don't know sales. But then I learned it and learned that doing sales is not about just going and saying, I did this and I did that. It was more about making connections and friendships. So I reached out, I kind of went back to all the network I had in that large corporate company that I was working on in Callison. Like all those people, the 100 people that were there, they were no longer there. They were in other places. So my network automatically had expanded, and I attended so many architecture events and connected with people and made friends. That's how I started. And my marketing material was not about the things I did, but was more about education also. I'm going to teach you something. I'm not going to sell you anything, but I'm going to give you something that you need. So I did lots of lunch and learns and free workshops for architecture offices.
Amazing.
And it really worked. So once we get one project, then the good client care and doing good design, it results in that client staying and becoming your referral for more. So we haven't done much marketing in the past 2-3 years. But yeah, I guess the intense amount of work I did in the first 2 years of Seed was, it worked because still giving fruits. But I definitely want to go back to that and be more selective of what we work on and the typology of projects, rather than just be a referral, constant RFPs of similar things.
Yeah, fantastic. It's very impressive, and I think it speaks to that it takes so much energy to get something going and to get something rolling.
Yeah, that first push.
The first push, extremely hard. Being selective now, and your office seems to be growing in a healthy way without still maintaining sort of the design quality, and now being potentially able to select what projects you want to work on. Coming kind of to the same question, where do you want to see Seed develop, and what is potentially something that you might be looking forward to accomplish with Seed? Do you want to grow it into a larger firm, a larger entity? How do you feel about it right now?
Yeah, right now we are. First of all, it's been a while that I don't make decisions on my own, just me. So it's like a team decision, and we constantly gotta sit together and revisit the vision of the company. Currently we're not looking at growing too much or making too big. We're very cautious of staying authentic and staying loyal to our vision and not accept any project. I guess this is now it's a point of privilege to say that because economy is good. It has been times that we had to say yes to anything that comes by to bring in cash flow. But right now it's more. So recently we decided to define these buckets of typology of projects. Like if there's retail, hospitality, cultural, which this is my favorite. Lindsay, which is the director at our office, like she likes wellness. She loves to work on wellness spaces, and so that's another bucket that we want to fill in. But we don't want to get too much of one thing that consumes all our resources, so we can't work on other projects.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to stay relatively small, or I guess like small in lighting design. I guess we're going to be mid-sized, but but having different typologies, like being open to new projects, and yeah.
Why don't we finish it off just with two pieces in education, because I feel like you also dedicate your time to learning and to education for, I think, Pratt at some point, New York School of Interior Design, and Parsons as well.
So it was always a dream for me to teach and be part of academia of lighting design, and it was challenging because I didn't go to school here. You either have an experience as an educator or you're an alumni of a school, and I was neither of those. So it was a lot. I put a lot of effort. So I volunteered a lot for IES, for Illuminating Engineering Society, to do workshops, so in the educational committee. I attended lots of juries for Parsons and different places, but at the end I was able to get a job at New York School of Interior Design to teach to interior designers, lighting to interior designers, and then that kind of became now a referral. So I was referred by the dean of New York School of Interior Design to Pratt, and then for Parsons I was in talk with the Parsons director at a time, and then he reached out to me and gave me the exact class that I always wanted to teach, which is a studio class, and I really enjoyed because it's at the same time it's very refreshing to see students with their pure minds, creative minds, without thinking much about contractors and money and codes, and so it's really great, and I learn a lot from them, but I also enjoy mentoring and bringing up the next generations of lighting designers. And it's great because also good for recruiting. We have people from Parsons joining our company all the time as interns or designers, so it's great.
Amazing. Okay, my only 2 points are sort of the organizations that you mentioned. You mentioned the IES, the ILD is also a part. How do you look at these associations or organizations, and what do you think they bring sort of to the industry or to you, or what do they mean for you?
I think they're both really valuable to the industry. ILD, they're pretty different. I think IS is more focused on education, bringing resources, and so what I use IES for always is attending their webinars, like all the education material they bring to the community. And ILD for me is like this place where you connect with all other lighting designers in the world. I whenever I wanted to search for a job before, I would have gone to ILD career part of the
fairs.
So and then also kind of knowing the fact that ILD stands for lighting design, they're independent, and there are certain I guess things that you have to abate by to be part of an ILD. I was lucky to be a jury at an ILD award, which connected me with many influential people. Back then I was a designer at Callison, but I learned a lot about how influential lighting designers judge a project and and what are their opinions. And the questions that came up throughout that judging period, I still ask myself on my own projects. It's like, is this project contributing to this? Is the impact in a certain way? Is this an award-winning project? That question was important because we all do beautiful lighting design. Everyone in the city they're all great and creative, but the impact and more in-depth questioning what you're doing was important, and I think ILD stands for that, which is really valuable.
Tremendous. Thank you. Now, towards the end, is there something that you wish any designer or any other professional designer leading a business or student or just entering, anything that you would want people to know about you or the seed, or anything that you would like to communicate to them at large? It can be anything.
I can give an advice to younger designers to stay curious, to not rush into wanting to start a business. It's a difficult thing, so take your time, become a senior, and work a long time at established firms to learn, and then step into this, to do it maturely enough for it to last longer. For employers, I also think transparency, it's in a company it's a key for its success, and also giving voice to your employees. It's important. It's not just about you taking that ego out, and the collaboration of a team is what makes a studio most valuable.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
My absolute last thing is I have to also say how much I love your email newsletter in situ. Would you mind just exploring a little bit, because the email newsletters, I think, I feel like they must take so much work to put together, because they are so rich and so beautiful and inspiring and educational.
We are also very proud of that. And thank you so much for mentioning it. It does take time, but we're proud that we are consistent about it. So it's treated as a project in our studio. It's never kind of looked down upon. So Institute is a chance for us to think a little bit out of the box, step away from our project necessarily, and interview people that are inspiring to us, bring up sometimes we use it as marketing to showcase our projects, but also introduce our team to the world, and also interesting topics that come up. We all contribute to it, so this is a chance for everyone in the office to take a part. So we take turns to write something that we think and we have meetings way beforehand to plan it. It's kind of like a very tiny mini magazine style approach, but so we all contribute. We brainstorm as a team, as a whole, to what are the things that we want to talk about, or something that each person thinks is interesting and can write about it. And I think it also it's a good development of our writing skills, because I think that's very important in any creative business.
To write, to communicate visually, to express ideas.
Yes, and we get a lot of good feedback about it, so that helps us, motivates us to keep going.
Yeah. People can learn more about The Seed at www.theseed.lighting. I assume I think that's also the place to sign up for the newsletter.
Yes, you can subscribe.
I think with the newsletter and everything that we just talked about, I really much appreciate it to learn more about it. I think it just underlines and creates a more holistic picture of why and how the Seed is so rich and different. And I think the Seed is comparing it to other lighting designers, doing something so much different, maybe richer, better at communicating, presenting yourself in a way that's very fresh, that's not unusual is the wrong word, but it's very special, and it's definitely standing out that the design expertise is not only pointed towards architectural lighting design and finding the right fixture for the right problem, but also a holistic approach and a holistic element that you bring and contribute to projects. So I only can say thank you, because I have been a follower of you since the time I recognized you, still part of HLB. I think the moment I recognized was like an undercut that you had in your hair. Yes. And it's something that I think is maybe so small, but I think it communicates like how you dress, how you present yourself to the world, that if you are open-minded and you believe, you do what you believe in, that you radiate this to the universe and you attract kind of what you want to pursue.
I think just to add to that, thank you so much first. And I think as creative people, and whatever we do, I think everything about us, our lifestyle, everything that we send to someone, it needs to be designed and carefully thought about. It's not, don't think that the presentation doesn't matter because your idea is great. I think every part of your visuals, what you say, how your emails look like, it's important. That's how you build a brand, and I think it's really important. So I'm glad you said that, because we've been trying to build a brand. So
you certainly do, and I appreciate that you share this and highlight this, how important it is to create not just a lighting design business, but a brand for yourself. And I truly appreciate about you having had you on the show, and I appreciate it. And I continue to see how the business continues to thrive, and I can't wait for a conversation in 5 or 10 years.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Golsana. Thank you. Dear listeners, thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Golsana Heshmati from The Seed. Personally, I have been a fan of The Seed from the very first day, and I'm so excited to see The Seed thrive, and the projects, the design, the holistic thinking, the integrity to design is absolutely phenomenal. And I only can invite you and everyone listening to check out the website, theseed.lighting, and have a look, see what you like there, if you like something. And I'm pretty sure Golsana would be happy for you to reach out, drop a note, and say hi. As always, if you have any questions or concerns, please reach out to me on Instagram or LinkedIn. And I guess I talk to you in the next one. Enjoy.